that is what we need, right? From the very beginning of the pandemic, one of the main things that was said, aside from test,
Mm-hmm.
was you need to react. You can't. Yes, of course, you need to study the situation and think about the situation, but you don't have weeks and months and
No.
years to discuss about it.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah, that's really true, and I think that's led. You have to make those decisions, those really hard decisions, very quickly, not based on a whole lot of evidence because it doesn't exist yet, because you can't wait for the evidence. Yeah.
makes it all even harder.
Mm.
And talking about making things harder, as you know, New Zealand has been a story of hope, of inspiration, that just shows that when the community, so when all the citizens put their part, then things can be done. When the government is clear, gives just a transparent look at what is happening, what can happen, what shouldn't happen, and what needs to be done, things can work, right? So for a long time, and yes, there's the skepticals that say, oh, but you know, New Zealand is so far away, and New Zealand, there's barely any people there, and that's why everything's fine. Maybe there's a little bit of truth in it. I mean, yes,
Mm.
there is a little bit of truth, but that's not why it has
No,
done well.
no. Well, exactly. I think it's very easy to sit there and be like, "Oh, you're so far away. You're so small. You're not densely populated." But at the same time, like, we started to get that sort of incline in cases. You started to get that increase and the first sign of community transmission when they shut it down. So, if they didn't shut it down, we would be seeing something like a million times worse than what we actually saw. So, and like all of that is from that, like their response and that clear empathetic messaging. And I think what they did really well was just this message of unity. It was all about, we are doing this together, we're all staying home, we're doing this together as a country to save lives.
Exactly.
And I think, yeah, um,
A
it
united front, right?
yeah.
Something for everybody,
Mm.
not against something, because as you've seen, there's been some countries that have spoken about the virus as if it was an enemy and we were or they were at war, which
Yeah,
uh, I'm still undecided if it's a good approach or not.
I agree. I've been having that same sort of, yeah, thoughts about there's a lot of similarities in the terminology that we're using to liken it to, like, we're going to battle, like the doctors and stuff are these war front heroes. And yeah, and like people that are working in the supermarket, they're on the front line. And I don't know how appropriate it is to be using such forceful war terminology.
Exactly, especially because, at least how I think of it, is that using such terminology kind of gives you or gives the country, gives the government the okay to think, well, in a war you lose people, so if some essential
Mm.
workers die, yes, it is sad, but it's expected. And
Mhm.
no, it shouldn't be expected, and it can't be okayed from the beginning just because you have this type of conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, like language, terminology, it's so important. So that's really interesting. And like, yeah, talking about the sort of your supermarket staff, your nurses, your doctors as being on the front line, it almost makes, they're at such an increased risk. So if you sacrifice a couple of them, maybe you can still win the war, but that's not really what anybody wants.
No, not at all. And that's why New Zealand's approach and just their communication skills, because that's
Mm.
what it is, also knowing how to communicate in a difficult situation, uh, yeah,
Mm,
the saying unity, what you were just saying, right? It's all of us together working for each other. And also the fact, the more you do now, the less you will have to do later, right?
exactly. I know. Like my family went to, like my brother went to a rugby game last night, which was had about 40,000 people at, which like, that's massive. No, there's no other stadium in the world that's having that many people at the moment, which is really cool. And that's because they did those hard yards early and they got the message out and they all united.
Exactly. And unfortunately, barely anybody else can say that in the
Mm,
world. 40,000 people at a game right now is a thing of the past and a dream of very far away future for many.
right. It
So,
was, yeah, it was really, really heartwarming. Like it got goosebumps just watching it. It's really
and
special.
did the team that your brother
Yeah,
cheers
our
for,
team
did they
won
win? Yeah. Okay.
it.
That's good. um